I'm Ben Beadle. I'm the Chief Exec of the National Residential Landlords Association. I am first and foremost a landlord. I've been a landlord for 20 years, and it's my great privilege to hold this position and be talking up the role of responsible landlords and the work that we're doing in the sector. I thought what I would do is just set out a little bit around what we're doing to make life easier for landlords, but then get straight into the meat of the discussion, which is around reform, what's coming down the track, what we're doing to kind of protect the private rented sector. If you haven't seen the light, so you're not yet a member, we've got three principal areas that we work to. The first is campaigning, giving landlords a strong voice in the sector, speaking truth to power, but always making sure that our members' voices are in the room when it matters. We're all about serving landlords wherever you are across England and Wales, and we want to make sure that we give you the tools within which to execute your landlord responsibilities as easily and as thoroughly as possible. And we want to make sure that your renters have a good experience as well, because I'm very much a believer that although the media would have us pitted against each other day in, day out, I see really high satisfaction rates from government figures, and I know that landlords are doing a great job. I also know that there's some people around the edges that give us a bad name, and we have to strive to make sure that we separate those two audiences so we don't get our reputations any worsened. We've got over 100,000 members, 106,000 members as of this morning, and it's really, really important that we have that backing so that we can give you a loud voice when it comes to lobbying and campaigning. Three things that we're doing to make your life easier. You may well have seen on the stand downstairs, we've entered into an arrangement with Safe2, giving members discounted safety certificates and using technology to take the pain away from organising all of these things. Do have a chat with the team downstairs, but this is about making sure that we can execute our compliance responsibilities quickly, cheaply, and as easily and pain-free as possible. Second thing that we have in our armoury is portfolio, which is, if you use Open Rent, it's a very, very similar type of system. It's free if you are a member. You pay £28 to advertise your properties on Rightmove and Zoopla, but essentially it's a management software where you can keep track of all of your compliance information, your properties, your rent schedules, communicate with your tenants, a whole range of wizardry at your fingertips for no extra cost, all included in your membership. And the third thing that we're offering, which is a recent development, is a partnership with Currys. So if you need to replace your white goods, we're leveraging our 105,000 members to make sure that you get a discount and an easy to use service through Currys business. But you're not here to hear about that. You're here to see this ugly mug or two ugly mugs and what we're doing for campaigning activity. For me, it's all about how we project the image of our members and responsible landlords. So my job is to make sure that we are in the room making the arguments on your behalf in what is a very, very tricky sector at the moment. And actually, the whole purpose of the merger 4 years ago, when I first took up this position, was to give landlords a bigger voice. So we invest our membership money on research and reliable data to make sure that it's not just anecdotal stuff, it's not just surveys from members, although that's incredibly important. It's around academics' views on the private rented sector. It's around renters' views actually on the private rented sector, and actually using that to carve out an argument. My job is to foster really positive relationships with politicians, peers, government ministers, civil servants, basically anybody that will listen and anybody that's got a modicum of influence. And so on your behalf, you may or may not see these things, but we deliver written and oral evidence to select committees on key issues relating to the private rented sector. You may well have seen me at the DWP Select Committee, the Levelling Up Select Committee. This is all about communicating the issues that are going on in the sector. And as I said at the outset, I'm a landlord for 20 years. Your issues are my issues, and my issues are very much your issues as well. I just have the position to be able to take those voices and do something about it. I wanted just to, not that you need a graph to show you what landlords are feeling at the moment, but this is the backdrop of what we are dealing with. We are a sector that is under attack as far as I can see. And I'm not so sure it's going to get a huge much better. But what our data shows us is that just 5% of private landlords purchased properties during Q2 of this year. A third said that they plan to cut properties they let over the coming year, and 12% have sold during the same period. And this is against the backdrop, folks, of 2/3 of you reporting white hot tenant demand. And we can see it playing out. We can see it playing out in terms of rents. We can see it playing out in terms of the number of people that are queuing around the block to view one property. You may well have seen the Rightmove announcement this week that's gone from 20 to 25 applicants per property. Well, that's just bonkers. That's just absolutely bonkers. And it is a problem for everybody. There will be people out there that say, well, it's really good news, actually, that landlords are leaving the sector, because that means first-time buyers will be able to get their foot on the property ladder. Well, that may be a good thing. But if we don't replace that stock that's left behind in the private rented sector, then the supply and demand imbalance that we see and the cost challenges that we see will only get worse. And there's three principal reasons. I've not updated this slide, I'm afraid, but EPC changes have kind of gone away a little bit for now. But the impact of rental reform, the impact on interest rates and taxation, and the impact of energy. And I still think that is a risk, by the way, despite the Prime Minister's announcement last week of scrapping the EPC projection. It will come in one way or t'other, whether it's this administration or whether it's a red administration. And one of the things I should just stress is that we're working very, very hard with the Labour Party, with their housing manifesto, and trying to influence the future direction of travel for landlords. So I will be hot-footing it up to Liverpool, living my best life on Sunday until Wednesday, having discussions about their direction of travel and how landlords can help them. Because what I would say is that with every ideology, there is a realism that needs to kick in, which is pragmatism. You know, if you hurt landlords, you will invariably hurt renters. And I think that's the message that we have to get across, and certainly one that I will be making to anybody that will listen up in Liverpool. So renters reform, this was the key thing on the agenda that landlords told us that they were worried about. I'm not going to dress it up, folks. If and when this comes in, it is an if, I think, but it's a when in the long term, because if the Blues don't do it, the Reds will. It's as simple as that. So when it comes in, it will change the way that you look after your properties and the way that you manage them. I think all of those things that are in the bill, landlords are able to contend with. That's if you can be bothered to contend with them, and you know everything else kind of stacks up. You need to have the willingness to be able to change. I'm pleased to see that government have adopted a number of the NRLA's proposals, particularly in terms of antisocial behaviour. We did a lot of work in the run-up to the Prime Minister's announcement, and that included a lower test. What a lot of you tell me is that, and I know this for myself, is that managing antisocial behaviour is really, really difficult. You're invariably left with the perpetrator to deal with when every other bugger moves out. And so it's really, really important that test is achievable when it comes to managing antisocial behaviour. And the government and Gove himself has accepted that with these grounds. The bill is still in its early stages, and I would be urging you absolutely not to panic. And we're seeing stuff play out at the moment. You may well have seen in the news a couple of weeks or so ago, Tory landlords getting at the whips, getting at government because they're concerned about all of the things that are in there. Well, how the Tories set their policy is entirely up to them. What we must do is to continue to raise the concerns about the things that don't work with this bill, because whenever it comes in and whatever it looks like, landlords must have confidence that they can still operate in the sector, because if they don't, that's going to impact rents and supply even more. So there's a massive opportunity at the moment for you and us to be able to influence the agenda. If you haven't written to your MP, please do it. Ask your MP to write to the Secretary of State with your concerns. Go to the Write to My MP page on the website. Lots of tools and tips about how to do it. One of the things that my friends at tenant groups do very well is they mobilise. You hear them. They out with their placards and stuff like that. I'm not suggesting we march on Downing Street, but I am suggesting you write to your MP because those things do matter. And I think there's a real opportunity now to make sure that some of these changes that are needed to the bill get delivered upon, particularly given the concerns expressed at the Tory party conference where I was last week, or this week actually, it was earlier this week. So what is included, and as I say, this is what's in the bill at the moment. This is about increased security. There are no giveaways in here for you folks, so don't expect any. This is about changing the market so that renters have more security. Whether we like it or not, this is what it is. There is an opportunity to tweak some of these things. I don't think there is the opportunity to get rid of things entirely. So abolition of Section 21 is kind of the sexy headline. Open-ended tenancies is probably the more difficult thing to be able to deal with. So that means it's creating a periodic tenancy from day one, the abolition of the fixed term. And that tenancy can only be brought to an end with a legitimate reason. One of the areas we've been very successful at is making sure we have 33 legitimate reasons when landlords need to repossess their property. Because what people tell me is they don't go around willy-nilly issuing Section 21s like confetti. They have a reason. And it's really, really important that we have the right reasons with a sensible notice period attached to them. So I'm really pleased to see a significant number of mandatory grounds. Why am I pleased to see that? Well, that means that it's not down to the judge's discretion. It means if you tick the box, you will get possession. There's no discretion available to judges. And that actually was still very much under threat. And we have new mandatory grounds around rent arrears and antisocial behaviour, which is really, really helpful. As I say, we've got the other areas that landlords were worried about is grounds for selling or moving in and repeated rent arrears. And those are all mandatory grounds. I had a lady ask me earlier, well, with these changes, I'm not going to be able to get my property back if I want to sell it or if I want to move back in. Well, you will. You absolutely will. You won't be able to give notice within the first 6 months of the tenancy, but, as proper investors, I would have thought that you would have made your mind up with a 6-month lead in. So these are all things that can be lived with. But I will come on to what doesn't work in a moment. We see a role for improved dispute resolution, so an increased role of the first tier tribunal to manage unfair rent increases. Important to stress that the first tier tribunal works at a market rate level. So if the market is increasing, actually most landlords don't increase their rents to market level. So I'm not worried about this particularly. I'm worried about the resourcing and how quickly they're going to process stuff, but I'm not worried about the role of the first tier tribunal. The property portal is a great way for responsible landlords to be able to demonstrate their compliance and show that the properties they're letting are in good condition and meet all safety requirements. Who here rents crappy, mouldy properties? Anyone? No, didn't think so. And so actually I look at this in a really positive way. I think it is a good opportunity for the responsible landlords to separate themselves from the rogue and criminal operators. What it also does is it gives local authorities a far more targeted database to be able to go after the bad boys and girls. And that's why I want to see selective licensing scrapped, because otherwise it would just reconfirm everything I know about licensing, which is it's a cash cow to bleed landlords dry with no reference back to standards whatsoever. Better compliance, a PRS ombudsman, he was there. Sean was here earlier today, and I think there's already an ombudsman for letting agents. I can't see any problem with an ombudsman for the private rented sector, as long as it doesn't become a big, expensive bureaucracy. It needs to be cheap and cheerful, quick and dirty. And then a positive renting experience, a legal right to request pets, or as I prefer, a legal right to refuse pets. Landlords must always be in control of who moves into their properties. They know what's good for their properties, and I will be holding feet to the fire on that. Pets are a good thing, but you know, if you've got a studio flat and an applicant with 4 Dalmatians, probably that's not the best property for them, and I think it must always be within your right to refuse with reasonable grounds, and that's exactly what's in this bill. So what's missing, what's to come? A decent home standard for the private rented sector. Again, no problem with that. There's a decent home standard for the social sector, but they are 2 different things. I don't want to be ripping out my avocado green bathroom after 10 years just because a standard tells me. The standard must be relevant and proportionate. So as long as that avocado green bathroom is safe and workable and category 1 hazard free, it should be absolutely fine. So we're working very hard to make sure that the decent home standard is reflective of the private rented sector rather than the social sector, and the Secretary of State has given us written assurances on that. We will see a ban on those on saying that you don't accept people on housing benefit. I would much rather see improvements to the universal credit system in